Studies Section 3, Philosophy as Rational Inquiry. Introduction. Though we often talk about philosophy and even claim to be sometimes engaged in philosophy as an activity, it remains a matter of fact that defining philosophy is a difficult task. Part of what has been identified as what makes it difficult is the difficulty in finding a consensus among philosophers about the definition of their discipline is precisely that they have frequently come to it from different areas of experience upon which they find it especially necessary to meaningfully reflect. As such, it will be most appropriate to attempt what has often been referred to as a working or tentative definition. We shall carry out this attempt by sampling opinions of philosophers about their own endeavors. Then we shall try to identify characteristics and areas of philosophical activity. We will also discuss the relations between philosophy and other concerns of the human mind, science, faith, and a certain art of living in order to clarify the position of philosophy in rational inquiry. Finally, a number of attitudes which have proved to foster philosophical thinking at different periods of history will be examined. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this section, you should be able to discuss the essential features of philosophy as a discipline, discuss the contributions of philosophy in any rational inquiry, point out the relations of philosophy with science, present at least two philosophers' perspective on philosophy. Defining philosophy. Even if the task is difficult, we should formulate at least a tentative definition of our subject. And so, let us begin the discourse here by first attempting a working definition of philosophy. To this end, philosophy can be defined as a rational inquiry into the meaning and deeper principles of reality in a broad sense. In sampling the views of philosophers about philosophy, the following opinions of famous philosophers will bring to light how the discipline has been variously understood. Three notions come from antiquity: Plato, Aristotle, and the Hellenistic period. Three from the modern age: Hume, Kant, and Marx. And three from 20th century: Maritain, Jaspers, analytic philosophers. Views of philosophers. Plato. Philosophy gives access to true reality, which lies in a separate world of ideas or forms. Philosophers discover there what things truly are. Thus, they become able to guide people and cities towards a good way of life. Aristotle. He agrees with the moral and social concerns of his master Plato. He considers that philosophy is an investigation of the causes and principles of things, but he adds that such principles are to be found in the reality of the natural world, not in a separate world. Stoics and Epicureans. In the period after the death of Aristotle, the Greek city-state went into decay under the Hellenistic kings. Life became troubled and insecure. Some philosophical schools appeared which wanted to provide their followers with an art of living. For example, the Stoics and the Epicureans offered their adherents a way of achieving the most satisfactory personal life. David Hume. Philosophy is, for Hume, a science of human nature based only on sense experience and observation. Understood in this sense, philosophy provides the only solid foundation for other sciences. Immanuel Kant. Philosophy must be critical, that is, it must be concerned with the analysis of the conditions of possibility of knowledge for human reason. The critical question in Kant's sense of the word becomes, therefore, what and how much can understanding and reason know apart from experience? Karl Marx. For Marx, though philosophers have only interpreted the world differently, where they ought to have changed it, philosophy ought to be the instrument to be employed if man would change his world. Jacques Maritain. For Maritain, philosophy is not wisdom of conduct or practical life that consists in acting well. It is a wisdom whose nature consists essentially in knowing. How? Knowing in the fullest and strictest sense of the term, that is to say, with certainty, and in being able to state why a thing is what it is and cannot be otherwise known by causes. Karl Jasper. The task of philosophy is not the same as that of science. Its task is to deal with human existence, with a person's immediate experience. Philosophizing means communicating not about objects, as is done in the so-called objective knowledge of things, but about the personal or subjective awareness of what an individual is. Trait of philosophical knowledge. We have illustrated great differences among philosophers in their notion and practice of philosophy. The awareness of such a great variety could discourage us from trying to describe what philosophical knowledge really is. And yet, it remains possible to bring forth a number of features that seem to belong to philosophy. Among these features include a search for knowledge, knowledge of what is fundamental in the object of human experience, and an inquiry into the whole of reality. Philosophy wants to investigate everything. It tries to understand by means of reason, which comprises intuition as well as reasoning, whatever is given in experience, self-experience, the life world according to E. Husserl, but also data gathered and probed by the sciences. Furthermore, philosophy may be understood as inclusive of what has been referred to as fundamental inquiries and special inquiries. Fundamental inquiries are undertaken in two sub-areas, theoretical philosophy and practical philosophy. Theoretical philosophy includes ontology or metaphysics, which is a study of basic categories and structures of whatever exists. Anthropology, which is a reflection on the essential features of human being, individual and social, and sometimes said to belong to special metaphysics. In English-speaking circles, it is usually reduced to philosophy of mind. There is also the aspect of cosmology or philosophy of nature. This is a study of the nature of knowledge and of how it can be achieved. Closely related to this is the theory of knowledge or epistemology, which is a study of the nature of knowledge and of how it can be achieved. Another aspect of this area of philosophy is logic. It is a study of the forms of valid reasoning and is considered one of the conditions for philosophical activity. Practical philosophy includes ethics or moral philosophy, which is a study of good and evil, of right or wrong, of the principles of morality, individual and social. Poetics or philosophy of doing or producing, which includes aesthetics, the study of the basic principles of the appreciation of art, including what makes something a work of art and how we interpret it, and philosophy of technique, a reflection on technical activities, their place, role, and value in human life. Special inquiries here refer to the group of the so-called philosophies of and some recent development in anthropology. They often contain two parts, a reflection on an aspect of reality and an epistemological reflection on the disciplines that deal with that aspect of reality, e.g., historical event. Some examples of this aspect of philosophy include philosophy of science, which is study of the methods for establishing scientific knowledge. It can be developed with regard to particular science, biology, physics, and so on. Social and political philosophy, a study of the fundamental principles of society and state. Philosophy of social science, a study of the basic categories of social scientific theories and of the methods for establishing social scientific knowledge. Philosophy of law, reflection on the juridical order. Philosophy of work, of play, a development of philosophical inquiry about ordinary human activities. Philosophy of religion, a study of the significance of religious practices. Philosophy of language, a study of the basic structures of language and of how language connects with the world. Hermeneutics, a study of the processes of interpretation and their conditions. Philosophy of history, a reflection on the cause of events and on the status and the methods of historical knowledge. Though no distinctions were stated between philosophy and the sciences, it's to be noted that there are, however, some texts of Aristotle which distinguish between physics, mathematics, and first philosophy or metaphysics. The philosophical attitude is characterized by a rational search for the understanding of things by means of arguments that need to be probed by reason. Such arguments are expected to follow the laws of logic, but there may also be philosophy, insight, and convictions that do not arise from logical argumentation. For example, in the perception of values, science, for its part, consists largely in a combination of experimental data and logical laws. Theoretical development may occupy a greater place in some sectors of scientific knowledge. The actual contribution of such theoretical elements toward knowledge of reality is judged by and larger in the light of a philosophical background, be it realist, empirist, or idealist. In the modern age, new development took place which gave a distinctive character to scientific activities. Francis Bacon, 1561 to 1626, and Galileo Galilei, 1564 to 1642, described the method and purpose of scientific knowledge. For Galileo, scientific work must be based on an experimental method with systematic observations and upon a mathematical reading of the universe. The cosmos is like a large book which can only be read in the language of mathematics. Philosophy says Galileo delights in the search for essences or essential characteristics, but modern science is happy with its knowledge of some properties of natural beings. In our inquiries, we either attempt to penetrate the true inner essence of natural substances, or we limit ourselves to knowledge of some of their properties. I hold the first thing impossible, but if we want to bring our attention to grasping some properties of things, then it seems to me that we must not despair of our ability to acquire it. Galileo did not object to a philosophy which would look for a general view of the universe, his cosmology, but he gave a new object to scientific work distinct from the philosophical one. In a similar vein, Descartes 1596 to 1650 held that a new philosophy can provide useful concepts to science. He was both a philosopher and a man of science. He discovered things in mathematics and practiced the experimental method. At the same time, he developed basic philosophical notions which were consonant with the new approach of natural science. For example, Descartes' distinction between two main kinds substances, mind and matter, included the definition of matter as what is extended. One of the characteristics of extended matter is that it can be measured. A scientific observation concerns merely measurable things. What is measured can be compared, related to other things, with the help of mathematical formula or through logical relations. All of this is typical of modern science. It can be said, indeed, that Descartes' philosophical endeavor provided a number of fundamental concepts which could go together with the recent development of science in the 17th century. The influence of empiricism. Empiricism is a large current in the history of philosophy. One of its great representatives, David Hume, 1711 to 1776, proposed philosophical reflections which have greatly influenced the general understanding of scientific activity. Hume claims that our knowledge of things can be based only on sense data, that is, whatever we come to know through the activity of our senses. Hume's notion of causality as a constant conjunction between two sense impressions and nothing more moves the foundation for all inquiries into necessary and universal scientific laws. Nothing in our sense experience indicates a necessary connection between a cause and its effects. No possible experience can ever indicate that similar past or present connections between natural events will apply in the future as they have occurred in the past, that the future will be similar to the past. Also, Immanuel Kant, 1724 to 1804, through his critical philosophy brought a new understanding of the relation between the mind and its object. Kant wanted to justify the findings of science, e.g., the universal and necessary laws of physics, against the attacks of Hume's empiricism. He came of thinking that the mind is shaping or molding its known object by means of some structures or categories of the understanding which are applied to the sense of data. Kant's critical approach is used up to this day in some scientific circles to explain the theoretical part of their work. Scientists with a leaning towards Kant consider that their hypotheses or theories are not a reflection or a picture of reality. They are rather the produce of the scientific mind, which shapes through them the multiplicity of data provided by observations and experiments. Relations between philosophy and sciences today. There are various ways of looking at the relations between scientific and philosophic activities today. A leading one in English-speaking circles consider that philosophy can still render a limited service, namely to check whether scientific language contains any logical ambiguities so as to attempt to remove such ambiguities. Otherwise, the undertakings of philosophy are thought to have become irrelevant. Other views are more open to fruitful relations between sciences and philosophy. Particular science have their own purpose and method, which many would agree are limited in scope and thus call for a collaboration with other sectors of scientific research and with people engaged philosophical reflection. The idea and practice of interdisciplinary activities has gained lots of ground. Philosophical is expected, especially in the so-called human science, to provide some fundamental views and insight about the meaning, the foundation, the purpose, or the value of reality. For instance, philosophy is expected to provide a coherent understanding of the human person and of its relations to the world and to others. In all, philosophy can be viewed from the following perspectives: philosophy as a search for knowledge, philosophy as knowledge of what is fundamental in the object of human experience, philosophy as an inquiry into the whole of reality. Perspectives on philosophy. Philosophy as a search for knowledge. Philosophy is certainly, in its own way, a search for knowledge and truth. As it progresses in its inquiries, it discovers elements of knowledge which it organizes into a system. From that point of view, philosophy can even be called a science. However, the method of philosophy is different from that of the natural sciences. The latter are bound, for example, to start from the observation of sense data. Philosophy, in some of its inquiries, is not bound in the same way it may start from the inner experience of persons. Philosophy as knowledge of what is fundamental in the object of human experience. Philosophy also starts from experience. If one agrees that experience is not limited to sense experience, philosophy builds on the experience of ordinary life, the life world, as some authors call it, which is manifested, for instance, in ordinary language. But it will also consider all data of human experience, and for that of human experience, it tries to understand rationally the whole of human experience, and for that purpose, it inquires into the principles, the foundations, the conditions, or presuppositions of experience. As a rational underwriting, philosophy is critical in this ordinary sense, and it makes use of argumentative skills. It wants to address all reasonable minds. Philosophy as an inquiry into the whole of reality. Philosophy is interested in the whole of reality. Moreover, its concern is holistic. That is, while like theology, it can be called a universal science because it intends to investigate all that belongs to human experience. However, philosophy represents an organized body of knowledge that can be distinguished from other disciplines. The whole body of knowledge can be divided into various groups. A first distinction is made between general sciences, philosophy and theology, and particular sciences. Then, the so-called particular sciences can be divided into formal science like logic and mathematics, which study formal systems, and fact-related science, either empirical, formal, or hermeneutical. On the one hand, empirical, formal sciences like physics, biology are concerned with a reality that can be grasped empirically through experiment, but they also make use of the resources of formal sciences. On the other hand, hermeneutical sciences try to interpret human reality in its actions or in its works. They are also called cultural science. They include humanities like history, language, art, religion, but also social and economic sciences. Philosophy is universal in its scope. It can be practiced in relation to a very broad area of inquiry, e.g., the characteristics of whatever exists, of all human beings, of nature, but it can also be practiced with regard to a more limited area or a special activity. Hence, the distinction used below between fundamental and special inquiries. Study section summary. From the foregoing, it may be said that one of the functions of philosophy is to aid in the search for knowledge. Indeed, philosophy contributes to man's ability and capacity to pursue happiness and fulfillment of life. Acquired wisdom, termed philosophical wisdom, which is the fruit of a coherent personal reflection based on solid argumentation, well connected with a general world view. Personal reflection, so understood, was represented in this study section in looking at the various sides to philosophy, such as practical philosophy and special philosophy. It was also studied the place and relation of philosophy with regard to the sciences. This is the end of study section 3. Thanks for listening.